Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Superhero Finder podcast. As always, your host, Matt Wilson, and I'm scouring the cosmos looking for inspirational stories, really cool people with messages to give out to the world so that you can take something away for yourself. Or maybe you're the kind of person that takes something, put my teeth back in, something away for somebody else. No matter what you're here for, thank you for joining us. And I'm well excited to be in the room with Beanie. How are you doing?
I'm all good. Nervous.
Nervous? Why?
I have no idea.
I mean, this is also the first podcast you've been on.
It is. It is, yeah.
So, for anyone that doesn't know who you are, because there'll be a lot of people that do know who you are, but if anyone doesn't, would you like to just introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Okay, so most people know me as Beanie. My actual name is Mia, but everyone knows me as Beanie. And to be honest, if you call me my actual name, even I look shocked at this point. So I am 23 and I am from the southeast of England. I have had my fair share of challenges throughout my life, even though I'm only 23. In different aspects of my life, I've worked with different people. I've been through all my own experiences, and I just want to help people. Bottom line is, I always want to help people, and if I can help one person, then that makes me feel great. So basically, I'm just a small neurodivergent being trying to make my way through the Jumanji levels of life.
That's a crazy idea, but I love it. It was when you said Jumanji, I think that took it to the next level.
Yeah, that's
So
how I
you
view
went,
it. Each year is a Jumanji level. And then you hit your
oh,
birthday, it's like boom, level up.
you gain more XP.
Yes,
Yes. So
exactly.
you mentioned there are a few things, and I just want to just start with something, and I think it's you made it clear that there's been a lot of hurdles and a lot of challenges in your life, but also I think it's incredible how, despite of that, you spend each and every day longing to help people.
Yes,
Yes.
I've always wanted to help people, always. So from the age of 14, I was already volunteering. So from about the age of 14, I'd say, and I did this for 5 years, I was working within youth work. Now that sounds really young to be working in youth work, but for the first few years it was obviously voluntary. And then alongside that, the older I got, the more training I got, the more I worked with people as I got older. And then I stopped doing that about 2 weeks before I turned 19. I'd done a bit of work in a care home. I've done about 2 or 3 years in a play centre. So I've always been working with people to help people.
Yeah.
And then it was as I got older, I strayed away from that. So I've always known that I kind of want to help people because you can't have bad without the good and you can't have good without the bad.
Hmm.
Um, but if I can bring some good to someone's bad, then that makes everyone happy. It's a win-win.
It is a win-win because we know there's bad, and as much as we like to pretend there's not bad, we can also create the good, and we definitely know how good feels.
Yes.
So, what made you kind of, because you mentioned straying away from that, what made you come away from that then, and what have you done instead with your time?
So I got to a point where I naturally felt like I'd done my part,
Yeah.
if that makes sense. I'd done it for 5 years, the vast majority of that being for free. It was all voluntary. So for a large portion of my teenage years, bearing in mind I was struggling as well at
Yeah.
the time, I had my own stuff going on. I got to the age where I was like, okay, I need to work out where I want to go now. Like, I've put my thoughts into other people, and I still do, and I am guilty of that. Um, but then it was at the point I was like, okay, I need to work out what I want to do. Where am I going with this? So I did health and social care in college, um, which due to mental health and various other issues, I dropped out a year early. And it kind of put a peg in the youth work. I was like, okay, I think that's done. I've achieved what I want to. That's done. And then I went into being a games master in an escape room, which was a job I absolutely loved. Best job in the world. And then COVID hit, and then again came another spiral. And then obviously now, for people who don't know me, I have registered as self-employed, and we're trying to make our way through chronic ailments, through mental health, through finding myself. So a bit of a self-discovery journey after all the shit came in waves. So now it's a Beanie story.
Well, it's page after page of the Beanie epic or biopic. Biopic is probably the word, isn't it? Biopic, it means like biography in film. So it's a story of you. So you've set yourself up as self-employed. Has that just been one business, or what have you focused on in terms of that?
I've gone through many hyperfocuses, which I now realise is because I found out I was neurodivergent. So there has been things that I thought, oh, that's a really good business idea, and I've bought all the stuff, and it's never been launched. So nobody knows, but I've got tons of candle making stuff in the downstairs cupboard. It never got launched. Then I went into woodworks, which did quite well, and I did take it to Etsy, and via TikTok and Etsy. We didn't do too shabby. And then it was my physical health was getting a bit much. So having to sit for like 6 hours just to paint something to be able to then sell it, it was too much. So I was like, this isn't viable long term. So then I went into paracord, and did key rings, my own style of fidgets to help people. And it didn't take off how I thought it was going to. I sold a few products, but I couldn't find my niche, shall we say. And now I have gone into crystals. So recently I've also been quite drawn to my spiritual side, and that's reading oracle and being interested in tarot. I have a massive crystal collection, so now I want to kind of make the crystals as jewelry, key rings, etc., which have healing properties, and therefore is still helping people.
So there's quite a few different things, but the one thing that kind of goes through all of those is a massive kind of creative streak.
Yes,
definitely. You have to be hands-on making something, or you were painting something, and then obviously you stopped that, and that's really cool. So now you mentioned, you alluded to, health challenges.
Yes.
Are you okay to go into a little bit about that, just in case anyone's listening in a similar position?
So I've had issues right from being a teenager. Well, right from when I was really little, really. So I've always had trouble with sort of bladder issues. And being young, you never want to admit that. And then as I got into my teens, it was getting more and more prominent. I then started having stomach issues, so I then had IBS. And then I'd say from the age of 14, 15, things really started to amp up. So then from 15, I had panic disorder, which then amplified my physical ailments, so my bladder and my stomach, having that anxiety. So then the further through I was getting as a teenager, the more things I was turning down. I was turning down school trips, I was turning down college trips, all because I had the fears of being around mass amounts of people. I had a fear of being away from a toilet, having to travel. It was a large reason I dropped out of college, as well as the college going to absolute shite. Sorry if anyone knows me personally and knows that college, but it went to absolute shite when I was there. But a lot of it as well was my anxiety. And then my anxiety amped up more. Then I started off with low mood and it turned to depression. So they went alongside each other. And then as I got older, things were just amplifying. So my IBS was getting worse, my bladder was getting worse, the anxiety was getting worse. Then I always felt different growing up. I've always known I don't really fit in. Even when I was going to the youth place, I was going there to see the youth workers, not the young people. And in my head, I was like, well, that's not like other people my age. Other people my age are out doing this and that. So I always knew I was different. And then obviously COVID hit, as we all know, big struggle for all of us being cut away from society. But I was already struggling to go out prior to COVID. I was already struggling to travel.
Yeah.
So when COVID hit and we were working through that, again, things amplified more. I noticed more issues physically, I noticed more issues mentally. And then I made the decision to go forward and straight up ask for potentially an autism assessment. Okay. So I went to my doctor with it. They allowed me to fill out the check boxes. And bearing in mind, this is something I've questioned for many years. And I was going many years back and forth with the idea of wanting to know if it was an official diagnosis.
Yeah.
So then I went to the doctors, got that. And at first it came back saying I was officially diagnosed last year. So this is within the space of a year of me being 22. So I was a lot older than sort of my teens. And firstly, it came back basically saying, you show a lot of traits, but you don't show enough for us to warrant you an assessment.
Right.
So then I sat there and I thought about it and I was like, so you're saying that I am potentially autistic, but I'm not autistic enough for you to warrant me
essentially the
clarification. Yeah. So I had a good friend at the time who I'm still very good friends with now, who has someone in her family with it. And she was like, and she's also a teacher. She works with sort of those needs herself. And she was like, okay, we'll compile a letter of all the reasons and more traits, because when you get this checkbox list, it is very much putting you into a label.
Yeah.
They're seeing if they can fit you in this box.
Yeah.
And if they can't, then it's not autistic. So we elaborated on everything. And from that one letter, they come back to me and we were like, right, we'll assess you.
Right.
Straight up, change their minds.
Yeah.
So I went through the assessment, which is like a good 3 stages. Had the video assessment, and they said within the first 10 minutes, they'd already diagnosed me. This was meant to be sort of an hour video call. And within the first 10 minutes, they hadn't even spoken to me yet. That was just speaking to my mum for 5 or 10 minutes.
Yeah.
They already knew the answer. But for professionality and to clarify, they had to go through all the questions and go through the whole assessment.
Yeah.
But they already knew before it even started.
Yeah.
And it was off the back of that they essentially said you're highly likely ADHD as well. And then I'm now on the list to get that official, but I would have that already if they were within the realm of what they do to put it through. But because it was one criteria and not the other, I have to go through the whole process again. So I got that diagnosis last year, and then I was also diagnosed last year with fibromyalgia, which is a chronic condition and is not widely enough spoken about or known about. A lot of people find it very hard to get a diagnosis. I was incredibly lucky. I compiled all my symptoms. To be honest, you come across as a hypochondriac. And other people with fibro will agree with me. You come across as a hypochondriac because you've got so many things wrong with you that you can't pair together, that the doctors can't pair together. And I've had a lot of friends with fibro So I went to my doctor with my massive list and I gave it to him and I said, I think I've got fibromyalgia. And I'd had blood tests to rule out lupus, arthritis, all your common ones that can just be diagnosed with a blood test or X, Y, and Z criteria. And then I was referred to rheumatology and it was said, yeah, you've got fibromyalgia. So I was very lucky and got through it very quick because really I was quite assertive. I was kind of knew what I had, knew that things had been ruled out, and then that's when I got my diagnosis as well.
So how does fibromyalgia kind of challenge you? How does it manifest in you then? So I'm guessing everybody's journey is kind of different with it.
Yeah, I think the thing is everyone's journey is kind of different, but in some ways everyone's going through the same thing.
Yeah.
Fibromyalgia, even doctors will say isn't widely known. Some people don't believe in it because there is no there's nothing to say you have it. There's a process of elimination that you don't have the other things, but there's nothing to show you. There's no blood test, there's no scan, there's nothing that can say, yeah, you've got it. So for some people, if you can't see it, it's not there. It's the same with mental health. For some people, they have the outlook of, well, I can't see it, so how do I know you're suffering? But overall, fibromyalgia is chronic pain and chronic fatigue as an umbrella shell. But there's hundreds and hundreds of symptoms that people don't know about. So dizziness, nausea, hives like rashes, eczema, all various skin conditions, headaches, migraines, acid reflux, stomach and bladder issues can all tie in. But anything you can think of that you haven't had an answer for, if you've got fibromyalgia, it's fibromyalgia. If you can't find anything else to give you a reason, I mean, shaking, muscle spasms, joint pain, there's literally endless symptoms to it. And then obviously it's different for each person, what they experience on a day-to-day.
Yeah.
And then obviously you can go into flares as well.
Into what, flares?
Flares, yeah. So everyone with fibromyalgia goes through something daily. Either daily you have fatigue, or daily you have some level of pain. And that will be your normal. So everyone's got their normal on a day-to-day, and then you'll have a day or a week or a month, depending on how long your flares last. It could be triggered, it could be out of nowhere, where everything is amped up. Your pain is amped up to a level that you might not be able to handle as much. The fatigue knocks you out. I've had it before where I've just wiped out. I've laid down and boom, I'm asleep. So all the symptoms can amp up in a flare, and it can just make you feel groggy, make you feel a lot more pain. So yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting because fibromyalgia is one of them ones that I didn't really know about, which is why I wanted to find out more. But I do remember it as I was growing up and kind of in my early 20s, hearing the name, but it very much being associated with almost like a made-up fallacy, kind of something where you just put everything else. And I think it's really important the kind of the definition that you almost gave there, and you said mental health, and the link you said to mental health, and I think why that's important is it's the absence of something physical, but you've still got the symptoms. So just because there isn't anything to prove that it is and identify it and give it a tag and give it a label and go, right, it's you.
Yeah.
You've still got the symptoms. So we still need to support the symptoms to try and understand where it's coming from, which we see in mental health, don't we? You can't
Yeah,
see depression. You can't see, well, you can see physiologically a bit more anxiety, but you can't see all of those things. But you know that someone's experiencing it.
and really fibromyalgia, there's been speculation. Obviously, there are researchers that are trying to find out more about it, and it is stemming from your nervous system and emotional trauma. So some people can develop fibromyalgia through trauma.
Right.
If you
Okay.
go through something particularly very mentally traumatic or physically traumatic, you can then develop fibromyalgia.
Right.
So in a way, it also is very, very connected with mental health. But I think a large problem of it is you still can't see it. For some people, if their pain is bad, they might walk with a walking stick. So therefore you would be able to see it.
Yeah.
For myself, I'm only 23. I look a lot younger. I'm always getting told how young I look. I look fairly fit. I'm quite slim, very small built. So if you were to see me in public, unless I'm doubled over in pain, which is very rare, a lot of us mask it because we're used to the pain we go through day to day. Apart from the ones close to us, they might see it more. But if you was to see me walking down the street, you wouldn't have a clue. And I think a lot of my issues, so my stomach issues, my bladder issues, the fibro, my anxiety, the depression, unless I'm physically shaking from my anxiety or physically having a panic attack, I look like a very healthy, fit individual. It doesn't look like there's anything wrong with me. And I've had people, obviously I do posts on TikTok since I've put one post up about fibromyalgia, and I did get people come back to me and say, I would never know you were going through that until you posted that video.
Yeah. Now we met on TikTok, and we now talk quite a lot. And I think one of the things that is incredible is, and it's a topic that often comes up, isn't it, about masking and the things that people deal with on a daily basis that you just can't comprehend unless you can physically see a sign of. Now, that's there's the movements with the lanyards with the sunflowers on, which is kind of the idea of the invisible, kind of the
Mm-hmm.
non-visible illnesses, right? So, do you find many people doubt, or do you find any negative energy about the fact that you go through this stuff? Do you find any maybe responses to a day that you're particularly in pain, or have you found your own ways of coping with that?
Um, I haven't found for myself anything that works as of yet. I'm yet to try medication because I was already on medication for a few things. So they were like, we don't want to put you on more. So I went for physiotherapy at first because for some people that does work. Unfortunately for me, it made it a lot worse, and I now have back pain that I never used to have.
Oh,
uh,
okay.
so I went through that, and then the thing is with fibromyalgia, there is no cure as of yet. There is no cure. It's about managing it. Again, like mental health, there isn't necessarily a cure to your anxiety or depression,
Yeah.
but there's things that can help it. There's things that can help you manage it. And it's finding your own way to manage. But the problem with that is until you can figure out your triggers or your limits, shall
Mm-hmm.
we say, it's very, very hard. But the problem is it's hard to figure out your limit when on one day you could walk for half an hour, let's
Mm-hmm.
say, and be completely fine. On another day, you could walk for 2 minutes and it feel like it's half killed you.
Yeah.
So your days are so different. So you literally have to judge it how you feel in that moment
Yes.
and how you feel on that day to day. So for me personally, I've not found I found some ways to cope with it, and accept that sometimes I do just need to sleep, which is frustrating. You can then feel like you've slept your day away. But yeah, it's different for everyone, I think. And I think that's one of the hardest things about it. There isn't just a medication you can go on that works. There isn't just a therapy that you can go to.
Yeah.
Or, there isn't just a few things that are like, I'm not saying it's easy with anxiety. I know it's not because I've got anxiety, but at least with anxiety, there are various different universal coping mechanisms
Yes.
that you can say, well, try this breathing technique. That one doesn't work for you. That's okay. Try this one. And I think with fibro, there is so much unknown and so much that you don't know kind of how to deal with or respond to, that it can make it incredibly difficult.
And I suppose at times quite overwhelming because you don't
Oh,
know.
definitely. I mean, that goes hand in hand. Obviously, I struggled with mental health prior to my physical issues.
Mm.
But I think for people with fibro as well, the minute you have it, becomes incredibly isolating. And a lot of people don't understand it. And it's hard to understand something that you've not been through. But it's also something that is hard to explain.
Yeah.
It is hard to sort of make someone understand what it's like to go through it day to day. So I think finding the balance of also, you get frustrated at yourself, but trying not to get frustrated at other people around you for not getting it. So it can be
Yes.
quite isolating.
Because I suppose sometimes you'd rather avoid the chance of the question being asked or you having to explain it rather than trying to explain it to someone that doesn't get it. So
Yeah.
you end up just not going in those situations, those social situations, and then kind of isolating yourself
Yeah.
because you get it, but it's a lot of effort in terms of the energy you might have that day to explain to other people.
Yeah. And equally, again, that comes back to masking. If it's something you've got to go through, but you're around a specific set of people that are not going to understand it. The same with mental health. If you're in a situation where people don't get it or don't get you, same with neurodivergency. If you're amongst a group of people that just don't understand, you will put this wall up. And I think it's just important to realize none of us know what everyone's going through.
Mm-hmm.
But obviously, you mentioned the lanyards and stuff before. I think it's great so people around know that you might need help. And I absolutely agree with it for people who it does work for. But for me personally, I don't want to have to put a visible label on myself that makes me stand out. Because there will always be judgment, whether you've got that there or not. For example, and I know a lot of people go through this, I have a radar key, which is a key, I don't know if it's worldwide, but definitely in the UK, that can get you into most disabled toilets. So, for example, if I walk in just how I am now, I could walk out and get some stares and some judgment maybe, oh, well, you don't need to use that toilet. Why are you in there? If I had the lanyard on, I can come out. I could get the judgment for wearing that lanyard and making it known. And I think people who do wear the lanyards have had judgment, whether that be because they're autistic, ADHD, or they've epilepsy, all the hidden things that people can't see. I think society needs to change rather than the people who are going through it, if that makes sense. So instead of putting a label on them and making them stand out and making them known, society needs to become more accepting of the fact you can't see this disorder or this mental health issue, or, because it's not just fibromyalgia. If you're epileptic, you wouldn't know from the outside. I've I've got no correlation. I don't know anyone or many people with epilepsy, but for them as well, I'm sure it's a similar feeling that you can't see it. But it's very much there, and that can then transform suddenly into a physical ailment. So I think as a society, we should just be more open and more aware to the unknown of what people are going through, because we're all going through something hidden, whether that be a physical or mental ailment.
So maybe if we all showed a little bit more kindness and compassion and just remove that immediate need to judge somebody when it's actually not important. Like you walking into a toilet and making a judgment on you, then how does that affect your day? Like as a person that's making the judgment, it holds no value, does it? But it can create conversation, it can create gossip, it can create all these things that aren't particularly positive. Yeah, I like that. And I definitely think there's definitely a lot of place to that. So how do we start getting that change then? What do you think? I know it's a big question, but
I think it's, there's always going to be wrongs and rights in the world. The world is never going to be perfect. And like I said before, there is always bad and good. There has to be, because that's balance. Yin and yang, you've got the light and the dark, but there is a bit of dark in the light and there's a bit of light in the dark. So you always need that balance. And when it comes to sort of mental health and physical disabilities, there's good days and bad days, but you can't have the good without the bad days. You can't have the bad days without the good days. So I think it's just starting small and getting more people to talk about it. And things are becoming more known through the platforms of TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, all the socials, YouTube, podcasts. Things are getting spoken more widely about. And I think it's never going to be changed by one person.
No.
So it takes a whole load of little to become a lot. And it's just growing that message and knowing that you're not going to be able to change everyone. So I only say society needs to change. Not everyone is going to change. It would be physically impossible, because there's no bad without the good. You still need that balance. But it's accepting that you need that balance.
That's huge.
Went on a bit of a tangent, didn't I?
You did. But so it's not. So sometimes when we say there's a big change, and then we split it into individuals, so say 8 billion people, 7 billion people, whatever. If 7 billion people did a really small change, then it would, if everyone did it, then it'd make a massive impact. We're not even saying that. We're recognizing that not all 7 billion have to, because why would they? It'd be crazy for us to even think that everyone could do it. Let's realize that there'll be some people that don't want to change their ways. There'll be some people that aren't equipped to learn about this stuff that's coming in, that aren't willing to change. So actually, let's open up more conversations and just be freer speaking with people that are willing. So we can have positive conversations rather than ones that we meet loads of friction.
Yeah.
We can get the bigger change from that, can't we? We can focus and actually get a bigger result from that. Which has amazing correlation as well to what has kind of become something major in the last 10 years, especially in terms of, gender identity and sexuality and all the other things, isn't it? Because again, you've got something that 3 generations ago, none of these conversations were even a thought. really, in a lot of people's minds. They were never, they were never introduced, and all of a sudden, through the medium of TikTok and things like that, we've got a big feeling of, this diversity, whether it be neurodiversity or gender diversity, or all these different feelings, and again, I suppose labels, because in
Yeah,
some way, some of the things are labels. But I also went off on a bit of a tangent there, didn't I?
you're all good. And the thing is, I left school, what, 6 years ago? I left school, and so I've had my own sexuality journey, and sort of questioning, shall we say,
Mm-hmm.
um, and things how they were when I was at school, which was only 6 years ago, I left, to now, there is rapid changing. Like, this is something that's moving
Mm.
faster and faster. Things are rapidly moving monthly. It's not even yearly at this point. Things are rapidly,
Yeah.
and there's things that I don't understand. And I only left 6 years ago. So
Yeah.
it is moving with the teenagers. I think that's where you see where it's most spoken about is the teens. It's
Yeah.
the younger, it's the adolescents who, again, there's always balance. The older generations, and it's nothing against them, there are things I don't understand. And I'm
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
much older than today's adolescents, but they are in their times. They're stuck to their ways. There are some people that aren't going to change.
Mm-hmm.
And for a lot of people, they can find that very frustrating. Well, why won't you accept me? And there needs to be some understanding and grasp as well that for so many years, this was the unknown. This is all very, very new. And I understand the frustration. I get it. I've been on my own sexuality journey. I was bullied for 5 years for being gay when I identified as straight myself. Then I hit
Right.
about 15 or 16, and I started questioning. And I thought, oh, maybe I'm bisexual. And I spoke to various people. I had a youth worker that was gay and married, so I
Mm.
spoke to her, and was really the first person I spoke to about it. And then as I've got older, I was confused. I was incredibly confused, and I got to a point where it was eating me alive because I didn't know who I was, and until last year, getting the diagnosis of autism, not only did I not fit in to
Mm.
what I deemed as normal or society, I then didn't know who I was on the inside either. So it became this whole identity crisis of looking at everyone, knowing who they were.
Yeah.
They knew that they liked women, or they knew that they liked men, or they knew that they fit in the umbrella of LGBT.
Yeah.
And I was in limbo. I didn't know who I was. I wasn't fitting in with these guys. I wasn't fitting in over here. I wasn't fitting in here. I'd had all the confusion and the
Mm-hmm.
bad side of it fired at me. And then it was only in the recent years I discovered that I might be asexual, which is some people don't even know about. But again, is a spectrum. If you could speak to me and I can tell you my version of asexual, but if you go and find someone else who's asexual, they could be completely different. The actual term is the same, but they'll have a different take on it of what it means for them. And I think even now, if someone, people do ask what your sexuality is. Whether that be because out of sheer interest,
Mm-hmm.
whether it be because they're part of a certain community themselves and they'd like to know,
Mm-hmm.
or whether it be a love interest, they want to know because they've taken a liking to you and they want to,
Mm-hmm.
connect in that way. So you do get the question of, oh, what's your sexuality? And for me, I just use the umbrella term gay. because I thought I knew who I was. Then I didn't. Then I did. Then I didn't. Then I did. So I just used the umbrella term. And for me, that's not putting me in a box, because I think problem with today, and people will disagree with me, and that's fine. Totally open for people disagreeing. People try and put themselves in a box. And that's what I tried to do for many years, because I felt like I had to. I felt like society pressured me to pick a direction, and I didn't know what direction I was going in. So I was like, well, but I don't fit in that box or that box. So what do I do now? So instead, I just removed the label and thought, I like who I like. If you want me to go in depth, and I feel comfortable to go in depth with whoever's speaking to me on a one-to-one, then I'll explain my journey, and who maybe I'm attracted to more or attracted to less. But I think if more people had the outlook of, we don't need the labels, again, physical, mental, sometimes you need a label to know what you're dealing with, how to deal with it.
Yes.
But I think on smaller things, and sometimes you need the label for yourself, but not necessarily for society.
Yes. I get that.
I think that's what I'm trying to get to. So you need that label for yourself, so you know who you are, you know how to deal with things, especially if it's mental or physical. You might need certain treatments or therapies or CBT to get away around the way you're thinking. So, but when it comes to society as a whole, I think we need to all stop trying to put ourselves into these boxes, because when you take that away, it takes away the anxiety and the need to fit in, and it just allows everyone to live as their own being without the judgment, without the need to be like, oh, well, I fit into this box, but I don't fit into this one. And I'm over here and you're over there. If we just live as humanity, and as individuals that come together in various ways, and you're not going to like everyone. We don't, there's people we come across, you're not going to like their energies, you're not going to vibe with them, you might have different interests, and that's okay. There doesn't need to be this built up negativity and tension around it. There's billions of people in the world. You can bypass the people that you're not vibing with, and there be no harsh barriers there. We can all just live freely. So for me personally, scrap the society's labels. And some are good. It's good to know if you want to use the label mental health, so you can meet like-minded people who are struggling. In that way, it's very, very good. But I think in a lot of ways, labels can be very, very detrimental to people's mental health, and the judgment and the stigma that gets piled upon them.
So what we're saying is then labels can be good, or terms can be good to bring people together to learn about themselves, but not as well. No, it's good for the person, but not necessary for anybody else.
Yeah. I mean, obviously everyone has different outlooks. But I think when things got complicated, and this isn't my battering the youth who do have all the different labels, because that's what suits them, and that's okay. But I think when things got complicated and when people started getting confused, especially the older generations looking down and back at everyone else, it was when more and more labels started piling up.
Yes.
You know, it couldn't just be, especially when it comes to sexuality, there are so many labels. I don't know what half of them are, and I'm part of that community.
Yeah.
It went from something simple to a few labels, you know, which was good. You know, it told someone what you liked or who you liked.
Yeah.
And allowed you to make those connections to something that has become so many options that when all the labels got added, that's when the confusion came in. And I am very, very accepting of all people. You do you, you know, as long as you're not horrible to me, or act negatively towards me, I can live in harmony with anyone, you know. And I'm very, very open to who people are and what they go through. And I've always said that nothing shocks me. With the jobs I've been in, I've either been through it or I've helped someone through it, or I know someone who's gone through it, or I've seen it, you know, so nothing shocks me at all. But I think that's when life got complicated for people. And actually, I think a lot of people in their teens would agree that when this came about, it spiked a lot of confusion within themselves to try and work out who they are.
Yes.
And to see which box they fit into. And I remember being a teenager and having less labels and trying to fit myself into a box.
Yeah.
And it was incredibly detrimental to my mental health. And I had fewer labels to pick from, shall we say. So I think everyone is entitled to how they want to identify. Whatever you want to identify as, whether that be your gender, your sexuality, everyone is entitled to know who they are. But I think to spark so many options and so much confusion and almost pressure to work out where you fit is incredibly difficult. And like I say, I've been there with less labels, and it absolutely destroyed me. Yeah,
because there's almost that pressure to conform to that as well. So it can bring you comfort knowing that, okay, this is where I sit. Okay, I get it. But then there's well, hang on a minute. How come? So, for example, you know, you categorize yourself as gay, and then you go, well, actually, I like someone of the opposite sex, so am I still gay? And like, why is that even a question? You're just you.
Exactly.
And we know the reason. We know the reason behind it is because, well, religion, right? So religion and history tell us that there's certain societal standards, and then we're working away from those and trying to, you know, then bring in laws that make sure everything's equal. But if we could just start again and just treat people on an individual level, then it actually doesn't matter to anybody else what you identify as, because you just identify with who you want to identify as.
Yeah. And I think I saw someone on TikTok actually, and they wrote a song, and I believe they identify themselves as transgender. But they've written a song, and there's some lyrics in there that says, in a few hundred years' time, when people dig up our bodies and they find our bones and they place them next to each other, they're not going to know the difference from you or I. You know, at the end of the day, we're all the same. When it comes to our remains and you strip it right back to who we are, nobody's going to know you apart from looking the same as the next person.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really sort of broad way to look at it.
Live how you want to live and just respect each other for it.
Yeah.
Let's
because we all
hope
end
it's
up in the
fair.
same place.
Well, yeah, we do. We start in the same place. We end up in the same place, right?
Exactly that.
Okay, well, I'm conscious of time, but I have one question for you. I said I didn't prepare any questions, and I don't know whether you're ready for this question or not. I'm going to ask you this question anyway. I'm going to put you on the spot, Beanie.
Right.
I'm just going to leave you hanging for a little bit just to see if you get any more nervous. Does that mean?
A little bit. Yeah.
If you could have any superpower in the world, what would it be and what would you use it for?
Oh, I think the ability to heal.
Did you say heal or kill? I'm struggling with your accent, and both are completely different.
Heal.
Heal.
Definitely
Okay.
the H. Um, not heal as in remove what people have been through,
Yeah.
as horrific as what that may be, because I do believe whatever we go through molds us into
Yes.
the people that we are.
Yes.
But I would love to be able to heal mental and physical trauma, shall we say, and not necessarily eradicate it. Like I say, you can't get rid of it because that molds someone into who they are. But allow them to accept and heal that part of them, almost like healing their inner child, which obviously there is like inner child work that can be done. There's therapies and that for that. But I think to have the ability to just heal someone from all the bad things so they can become themselves again and carry on. Remember, but be able to close that book and put it on a shelf instead of reliving.
So to take away the things that are holding somebody back from
Yeah.
creating their own future and kind of moving on,
Yeah.
moving forward. So you're going to
Yeah,
take
definitely.
away the breaks in people's brains. Let's not have breaks. Let's just go.
Yeah.
Love it. That went really deep as well.
It did go quite deep.
Yeah, it did. It did.
It's been a very deep and controversial.
Well, maybe we'll see. We'll see, won't we? It's an expose. It's an
We
expose.
shall see.
So, if anybody that's listening to this that doesn't already know you, that would like to find out more, or like to follow your journey, or follow you, or speak to you, or message you, anything, how can they find you?
You can find me as Lil Bean23 on TikTok. I think it's Lil_Bean_23. Probably best to reach me on there. Or if you are fond of Matt, join the Discord and create the little community we're building with us. And you'll find me on there either discussing random things with people, trying to help as many people as I can, if I am in the capacity to do so, or you'll find us all playing golf.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, mini golf. And thank you for the plug for the Discord as well. So
you're welcome.
we do have a Discord community. If you are on TikTok or anything, if you look at on any of my socials, if you look at the link tree, which is the link of all links, it kind of gives everything. You can access the Discord. It's completely free. We've got around 75 people in the community now. We all just help each other from a life experience point of view, kind of like almost like just peer help, just talking to people when you need a vent or just having that ear, all the cool things. I have a link above my head, which is my Patreon. So patreon.com/thekindeststrongman. That is a way that you can help support me do this podcast, because as a small creator, I don't get paid for doing this. I just do it because I love it, and I love sharing these stories and love meeting new people as well. Thank you to Lucy and James, who are my current patrons, who do help me and have enabled me to do some live episodes and some really cool stuff. And at this point, thank you for listening. I always say this, if you manage to reach the end, thank you ever so much, because I do appreciate it. I do appreciate you taking the time for yourself, or like I said, for taking time for others. And thank you for your time as well, Beanie.
You're more than welcome. I've enjoyed it.
Good.
I've enjoyed it. It's been a roller coaster.
To just put a little bit of context on that, we've had to stop this recording like 4 times because we had grandmas on the phone, we had banks on the phone, we had Amazon turn up at the door. So this has been
The world didn't want this podcast. It wasn't ready for this podcast.
We have persevered and made this happen.
So if you did make it to the end, we really, really appreciate it.
Yes, thank you. Laugh along with us, laugh at us, join us. So, guys, from myself and from Beanie, there's 2 words that I like to say to finish an episode, and those words are stay super, everyone,